At 7:30 p.m. on December 23, 1992, on a cold and foggy evening, 14-year-old Johanna Young of Watton, Norfolk, left her home on Merton Road, and her parents assumed she went to see her friends or her boyfriend and would eventually return. Johanna did not come home that evening, and when she did not come home on Christmas Eve, on December 24th, for her paper round in the morning, her parents called the police. Johanna was last seen alive on Watton High Street at around 8:30 p.m., and she spoke to friends outside the village chip shop. It was cold and foggy, and not many people were around to see her. On Boxing Day, Saturday, the 26th of December, 1992, a man walking his dog on Griston Road in Watton spotted and found a pair of black matchstick kicker trainers. They were placed neatly side by side in a hedgerow. He reported the find to Watton police. The trainers were later found out to be Johanna's. Later in the evening, Watton police officers with tracker dogs discovered her underwear and tights in the road 200 yards away from where her trainers were found by the dog walker. At 8:20 p.m., they discovered Johanna Young's body face down and half naked in an ice-cold, water-filled pit just off Griston Road, on farmland next to a disused but patrolled MOD base. The Watton police continued to search the area and the icy, cold marl pit, which was 7 foot deep in some places, for anything else they could find which would help the investigation. The setting of the crime occurred in the setting where the Babes in the Woods children's tale and pantomime happened in Wayland Wood near the rural town of Watton in Norfolk. The area, which was a secluded area, was described as a lover's lane, where young couples might go to kiss, make out, or engage in sexual activity. The post-mortem revealed 14-year-old Johanna Young had died from a severe head injury consistent with a fall, and her cause of death was from drowning. She was found naked from the waist down, and her jeans had not been found. The police said there was no evidence of rape, but would not say if Johanna had been sexually assaulted. The Guardian newspaper reported that the police claimed there was no plans for DNA testing, implying there was no blood, saliva, or semen to check. Because of the freezing water, the pathologist found it difficult to establish the time of death. A witness later came forward claiming they encountered the man who was probably Johanna's killer at about 11:10 p.m. the night she left home. Instead of looking at the 3 days she was missing, police were instead focusing on a period of just 2 hours and 40 minutes. Investigators believe the killer may have been scratched by brambles and undergrowth while carrying out the attack, and asked if anyone knew of a man acting suspicious to come forward. Johanna's footsteps that night were preserved by frost, led from the bottom of Muddy Lane, a few yards from her ex-boyfriend's home in Lovell Gardens, to Griston Road, close to where she died. Investigators refused to tell reporters if tire impressions or footprints were found accompanying Johanna's footprints. On the 31st of December 1992, a local newspaper called the Eastern Daily Press received an anonymous letter with a postcard which had a scribbled drawing of a motorbike, a girl and a youth being a male by a motorcycle. The police considered the evidence as a possible clue. Investigators considered 14-year-old Johanna's recent ex-boyfriend, 17-year-old Ryan Furman, who owned 3 motorcycles, as a person of interest and interviewed him on different occasions. Ryan Furman was Johanna's boyfriend for 6 months, until 2 nights before the schoolgirl went missing on December 23rd. Ryan Furman, who was a meat factory butcher, who worked at Bose, one of Europe's largest abattoirs, for 130 pounds a week, said to reporters he was hoping to get back with her in January. He split up with Johanna 2 days before she was murdered because he wanted to hang out with his friends and their motorcycles. He said he had a very close relationship with Johanna and that she was good fun to be with. Ryan and Johanna first met through friends at the Enterprise Club in Dereham. Ryan said Johanna bought him a ring for Christmas with his first name initial R on it, with money she made from her 11-pound-a-week earnings from her newspaper deliverer job with Edwards. He told the Daily Mirror that he showered her with gifts like jewelry. When he went out with her around the town, Ryan gave her a white satin pajama top as a gift for Christmas in exchange for the ring she gave him. Friends of Johanna said she liked to drink vodka and orange. She sometimes got drunk. On 4 or 5 occasions, Johanna phoned home to tell her parents she was staying with friends, but had never stayed out without contacting her parents. Johanna's parents said they assumed she was going to meet Ryan, but was unaware of the split. Her parents said she had taken down her Christmas cards in her bedroom. Ryan told them she had spoken about leaving home in the past, but her parents said she was happy enough, and she had left her hairbrush behind. Her father, Robert Young, said her hair was her pride and joy, and that she never goes out without her brush, and that she couldn't have been leaving. Johanna's parents and friends of Johanna believed she may have known her killer and that she wouldn't go somewhere with a stranger. In January 1993, it was reported in the Daily Mirror newspaper that Johanna Young's killer made 3 attempts to hide her body, according to police. The article claimed the police believed the killer returned on Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, and Boxing Day to the watery gravel pit where he dumped Johanna, and each time he piled bracken and brambles on top and around the corpse. In the Evening Standard newspaper, in January 1993, it was reported that the police are investigating the possibility that a love rival confronted Johanna, believing she had become involved with her boyfriend. In the article, it claimed the police are not ruling out the theory that the murderer was a girl. On January 3, 1993, 25-year-old Angela Stewart was found murdered at a Surrey beauty spot. She suffered horrific head injuries and her body had been burnt. Her husband, 24-year-old Benjamin Stewart, was charged and sentenced for her murder in the same year. On February 18, 1993, a man was questioned by police at Durham, Norfolk in connection with the murder of 14-year-old Johanna Young. On May 4, 1993, it was reported in the Daily Telegraph that 8 murders of females in England and 1 in Wales remained unsolved starting from the year 1990. On the 7th of June 1993, it was reported in the Evening Post that an inquest was opening into Johanna Young's death 6 months after she was murdered. Her parents were hoping the coroner would agree to release her body for a funeral. On Wednesday, the 30th of June 1993, 14-year-old Johanna Young was laid to rest 6 months after her murder. Her family, her ex-boyfriend, and her friends were at her funeral, which occurred in a small parish church near her home in Watton, Norfolk. The police would not let her parents bury her while they continued investigating her murder until a coroner gave permission for her funeral to happen. On August 12, 1993, Dr. David Harrison, a home office pathologist, told an inquest that it would have been virtually impossible for one person to have carried the body of the 150-pound girl to her death in an icy water-filled pit. He said there were no scratches or abrasions on Johanna's heels to indicate she was dragged by one person through undergrowth to the pit. Detective Superintendent Michael Cole, head of Norfolk CID, said it is possible that a second person may have become involved at a second stage. He said the police would be sympathetic to that person and appeal for him to come forward. He said the killer had been extremely fortunate that Johanna's body was immersed in water for 3 days, destroying forensic evidence. In September 1995, it was reported by the Evening Standard that detectives were probing to see if there was a possible connection between the September 1995 murder of missing 18-year-old fitness fanatic Rachel Lean and the murder of 14-year-old Johanna Young. Rachel Lean's body was found near a Norfolk RAF base, and Johanna Young's body was found near a disused RAF base 29 miles away 3 years prior in December 1992. Rachel Lean's murder was later solved in 1996, and Maria Monica Hanatiuk was convicted for her murder. On August 24, 1997, the Sunday Telegraph reported that fears were growing in Norfolk that a serial killer might be operating in the area after missing 12-year-old Thomas Marshall was found dead from being strangled. The article pointed out his murder had similarities to the murders of 16-year-old Natalie Pierman and 14-year-old Johanna Young. His murder was later solved, and 52-year-old shopkeeper Kevin Roberts was convicted in 1999. 2 decades had passed after 14-year-old Johanna Young was found brutally murdered, and a fresh appeal to the public was released in 2013, and in April 2014, 2 men were arrested in connection with her death. One of the men was in his 40s from the Watton area, and the other man was in his 30s from the Thetford area. Both men were bailed, and then no further action was taken against them. In May 2014, the police said a new witness had come forward with critical information about the death of Johanna Young. Police said a review had prompted new leads, including a sighting of a disheveled and slightly distressed man close to where Johanna's body was found. The witness reported seeing a man in a hooded top late in December 1992 who asked for a lift and was taken to Skalton, about 5 miles away from Watton. Police said the witness came forward with the critical piece of information after 2 men were arrested in April. A review of witness statements taken in early 1993 revealed a dog walker saw a girl matching Johanna's description on the night of her disappearance. She was with a young man leaning against a motorbike close to where she was found dead. 31 years have passed, and the December 1992 murder of 14-year-old Johanna Young still remains unsolved despite the numerous leads and arrests which have occurred throughout the investigation. On the 11th of May 2017, the mother of Michelle Aranda sent police to her Alapata apartment because she was worried and hadn't heard from Michelle in a week. Miami police found a mom's worst nightmare. The 28-year-old woman's body was found decomposing inside her apartment. Police found the 4th floor apartment at 1740 Northwest North River Drive in Miami, Florida, following a foul smell. Detectives listed her death as unclassified. Police noted Michelle Aranda's car, a black Mini Cooper with the tag EACZ50, was missing. Michelle Aranda's Facebook profile listed her as a waste management employee and a graduate of the University of North Texas. Her last public post on May 4, 2017, was a group picture of a bowling game with her co-workers.
Right now, a death investigation is underway after a woman was found dead inside of her apartment in Miami.
The deadly discovery made earlier this week. Officers found her body after they called her mother and asked them to check on her. We now know the victim's identity and we have new details about her death, but much about this deadly discovery is still a mystery.
Local 10 News reporter Madeline Wright has the latest from Miami.
Police now know the name of the woman who lived in this apartment building, but they don't know how she died. However, they are suspicious, in part because her car is missing. And now police are going around passing out these flyers urging people to come forward. You can see it says in big letters, "Information needed." Homicide detectives gathered at the apartment building where 28-year-old Michelle Aranda was found dead. Her black Mini Cooper nowhere to be found.
That is crazy, man.
This is a stock photo of a similar car with Florida license plate EACZ50. Police discovered Aranda's decomposing body Thursday after her mom, who lives out of state, asked police to check on her. Aranda lived at Serenity on the River Apartments on North River Drive in Miami. Neighbors say they hadn't seen her in 2 weeks. Aranda had an adventurous spirit. Records show she got her pilot's license last year. According to her LinkedIn account, she moved from Dallas to Miami about 3 years ago and worked as an environmental solutions specialist. Detectives are labeling Aranda's death unclassified until the medical examiner's office determines how she died. In the meantime, police continue the search for her car. Again, police are looking for a black Mini Cooper with a white top and Florida tag EACZ50. If you think that you've seen this car or if you have any information on this woman's death, call Crime Stoppers at 305-471-TIPS.
On the 23rd of March 1988, 26-year-old Deborah Linsley from Bromley, southeast London, boarded a train at 2:15 p.m. from Orpington to London Victoria at Pettswood Station and entered an old-fashioned compartment. Her body was found surrounded by blood by British rail staff at Victoria Station at 10 to 3 p.m. Deborah had been stabbed to death. A French au pair who was a passenger on the train of up to 70 people revealed she heard screaming on board the train after it left Brixton in South London. A post-mortem later revealed 26-year-old hotel receptionist Debbie Linsley was stabbed 11 times to the face, neck, and abdomen. Her cause of death was from a stab wound to the heart. Debbie was stabbed as she traveled in an old-style closed compartment from Pettswood to London Victoria Station. The design of the compartment meant there was no chance of escape. Deborah Linsley had defensive wounds, and the police had acquired DNA from the attacker after he had cut himself in the struggle. A witness came forward and helped investigators create a sketch of a male who they wanted to question in connection to Deborah Linsley's murder. The individual was described as a scruffy-looking man who was seen by a passenger leaping from the train at Penge East. The full description of the man was released 3 days after Deborah's murder, and that he was in his 20s or early 30s with a stocky build. He was about 5 foot 8 inches in height, with thick legs and shoulder-length, dirty blonde curly hair. On Sunday, March 27, 1988, 60 policemen, including cadets, began scouring railway embankments in a bid to find the murder weapon. They searched the track between Brixton and Penge in South London. Scotland Yard Metropolitan Police admitted they had no idea where on the railway line the brutal murder had taken place. The murder weapon was thought to be a robust knife with a blade up to about 7 inches long. On March 28, 1988, the Leicester Mercury reported that police were hunting the killers of 2 teenage girls murdered in separate incidents over the weekend, one in a park in Northampton and the other in Lover's Lane in Kent. Police said there was no apparent connection between the death of Amanda Hopkinson and the stabbing of Deborah Linsley on a train which had occurred a week prior to Amanda's murder. The murder of 13-year-old Carol Baldwin in March 1988 remains unsolved. The March 1988 murder of Amanda Hopkinson was later solved, with 25-year-old Kevin Downing being convicted of her murder in November 1988. In late March 1988, a reconstruction was released of Deborah Linsley, which retraced her last journey in the hope it would jog memories of travelers. In early June 1988, detectives were investigating an attack on a businesswoman who was knifed on a late-night train to Chichester from London, Victoria, the station Debbie Linsley was trying to reach when she died. A link with Deborah Linsley's unsolved railway killing was said to not be ruled out by the police. In September 1988, the Kensington and Chelsea News reported that the investigation into finding Debbie Linsley's killer was progressing well, and Detective Inspector Andrew Hunter said the police have a DNA profile of the suspect, and it was just a question of tying it up with a person. On Thursday, November 17, 1988, it was reported in the Daily Mirror that 19-year-old French student and au pair Hélène Jousselin, who was the witness who heard Debbie Linsley's screams, was too frightened to pull the alarm chain. Coroner Dr. Paul Knapman criticized her for not pulling the alarm chain. In the article, it stated the red-haired man is still the main suspect in Debbie's murder. On July 25, 1989, police issued an artist's impression of a man who beat and tried to sexually assault a young woman on a suburban train. The 28-year-old victim was described as a career girl by British Transport Police, needed stitches for cuts after being attacked in a first-class compartment on the 11:50 p.m. train from Victoria to Bromley South on Monday, July 17, 1989. The attacker fled the scene when the train pulled into South Bromley Station after being spotted by another passenger and a guard. The attack was described as vicious and unprovoked. The suspect was described as being of Mediterranean appearance, aged 20 to 25, 5 foot 4 inches to 5 foot 6 inches in height, with dark brown or black hair cut to a point at the front with a quiff. He was wearing dark trousers and a white jacket or anorak, which may have been blood-stained. Investigators wanted anyone with information on the railway attack to call the incident room at Victoria, where police were examining the possibility the incident could be linked to the unsolved murder of 26-year-old hotel receptionist Debbie Linsley. On the second anniversary of Debbie Linsley's death in March 1990, the Evening Standard reported that Debbie's mother, Marguerite Linsley, was still hopeful her daughter's killer would be caught. She hoped Debbie's killer would be caught before he could strike again. In the Evening Standard article, it stated that the investigators have a genetic fingerprint of the killer, which was revealed through the DNA profile of his or her blood. In October 1990, British Rail ordered a 7 p.m. curfew on the use of single-compartment carriages, feared by many women travelers, following a savage assault on 2 men. The order, from a senior manager, came after the men were sexually assaulted, beaten, and robbed aboard a midnight train from Charing Cross to Hayes by a 3rd man. More than a decade had passed, and in September 2002, Scotland Yard Metropolitan Police reopened the 1988 train murder case of 26-year-old Deborah Linsley after a DNA discovery. Detectives resubmitted bloodstains from the murder scene to the Forensic Science Service, which, using sensitive new techniques, pinpointed the killer's genetic fingerprint. Police appealed to the public to see if anyone had any new information which could help solve the murder. In February 2003, Keith Chamberlain of the Murder Review Group and Dickie Bird, a former Operation Trident officer, spoke to Deborah Linsley's parents and told them they were desperate to give them an answer. Keith Chamberlain told her parents that the killer may be dead, as the DNA profile had yielded nothing. In 2013, 25 years after Deborah's murder, detectives investigating her case were going to use the latest DNA techniques in a bid to identify her killer. A cold case team of Scotland Yard detectives were using familial DNA techniques to solve the case. The new techniques allowed them to check for possible matches among relatives of the perpetrator who may be on the database for minor crimes. Over the years, different names have been brought up on the internet who may possibly be Debbie Linsley's killer. Colin Ash Smith, a man with red hair who was Claire Tiltman's killer, has been brought up on message boards as someone who might fit the modus operandi and match the description of Debbie Linsley's killer. On December 20th, 1988, Colin Ash Smith struck first, attacking and attempting to sexually assault a 27-year-old woman in a quarry near Swanscombe in the borough of Dartford in Kent. He kidnapped the woman and dragged her to a wasteland where he indecently assaulted her and tried to rape her. He repeatedly plunged a knife into the ground beside her face. Colin Ash Smith photographed her, and before she lost consciousness, tried 3 times to kill her, twice with his knife and once with a tie. Police found notes of 4 assault plans drawn up for his attack on the woman. Colin Ash Smith was a milkman who was obsessed by Jack the Ripper and was diagnosed with schizoid personality disorder and lived in a fantasy world, believing himself to be Superman. On December 21, 1996, he received 3 life sentences for the attempted sexual assault and knife attack on the 27-year-old woman in 1988 and another knife attack in 1995 on 22-year-old Charlotte Barnard, who he stabbed 14 times in a failed murder attempt. Colin Ash Smith, who was 24 when he murdered 16-year-old Claire Tiltman, stabbing her from behind as she took a shortcut through a dark alleyway to a friend's house in 1993, just 4 days after her 16th birthday. A month later, he showed up in a beige jacket at her funeral, the same jacket he was wearing when he murdered her. 46-year-old Colin Ash Smith was convicted in 2014 of the 1993 murder of 16-year-old Claire Tiltman and must serve a minimum of 21 years in prison for the vicious knife attack. Colin's physical characteristics might be similar to the description of Debbie Linsley's attacker, but they have a full DNA profile in her case and would be able to compare Colin's DNA to the profile. It's safe to assume he was not the killer because he has not been charged. Serial killer and serial rapist Robert Napper is another name who has been brought up as the possible killer of Debbie Linsley. Just like Colin Ash Smith, he could be ruled out or in by comparing his DNA to the DNA profile. The March 1988 railway murder of 26-year-old Deborah Linsley is still unsolved, and despite investigators acquiring a full DNA profile, Debbie's killer has still not been caught.